Yeah. You guys ready? All right. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to now call to order tonight's meeting of the Albany Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anne, could we please do a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Donaldson?
Here.
Commissioner Friedland? Here. Commissioner Kent?
Here.
Commissioner Minotti?
Here.
Chair Geeson Fields?
Present. Okay, so the first items up are the consent calendar. The consent calendar items are considered to be routine and administerial and will be enacted by a single motion. There won't be a separate discussion of any of these items unless either a member of the audience or a member of the commission requests to pull an item from the consent calendar. And just again to reiterate, if you want to discuss anything for the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes of June 8th, Planning Application 16-042, the parking exception for 840 Carmel, the conditional use permit for 907 Key Route, or the planning application for 1109 Stannage, design review for the accessory structure, or the design review amendment at 1017 Talbot, please speak now and request to have it removed. Otherwise, those will be enacted on by a unanimous decision. And is there anyone in the audience who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Seeing the
You don't, if they don't have any questions, there's no need to do a presentation, so, yeah.
and so unless there is anything from the audience, anyone from the audience like to pull an item? I don't see anyone. Is there a commissioner who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
C.
Item C, planning application 16-019, the conditional use permit to convert new living space and have 3 off-street parking spaces at 907 Key Route. That will be pulled from the consent calendar,
Okay.
and then the rest are
I'll
on.
move approval of the rest of the consent calendar.
Okay.
I'll second.
There has been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so if your project was on the consent calendar, except for the 907 Key Route project, your project has been approved, and there is a 14-day appeal period, so please don't make any permanent decisions until that 14-day appeal period is over. Thank you.
Did you get online?
And now,
Is the owner here for 1109 Stannage?
Yeah, she's back here.
You there? I just want to say that the house in front came out so well. It was really nice to see it. The job, it looks great. Looks just great.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing. It's
Yeah,
beautiful,
yeah,
really
yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Very, very good job. Thank you.
and just to be clear, your project has been approved.
Your accessory building has been approved. Good.
And so now, I guess we will have a staff presentation on,
Did you have questions, or did you want
Yeah, I
us
had
to
well,
brief
there's
presentation?
A question I brought up last time, and I have the same question. The 3 parking spots, they don't, I mean, it looks almost impossible to get that third car out of there without driving over the planted median. And so I wanted to look at that again. I thought you were going to look at that adjacent neighbor to the south, if that was, it looks like they took out one of the parking spots. And it's possible that the entry to those those 3 cars could be shifted south a little bit and still retain a parking stall.
So shifting the driveway apron,
South,
Just
5
south.
feet or something, just to
Yeah.
make it a little easier for that third car to get out and not drive over the planted tree or whatever is there.
yeah. I mean, I think there is some flexibility to realign that to create, easier access to the parking pad. We can work with the applicant on
Yeah,
that.
because last time I brought it up, there was the concern we're going to lose a parking spot, and that's a real concern. But it looks like that parking spot's 25 feet wide, if I'm measuring it. Street spot, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it's wider than it needs to be, or could be shifted south a little bit. Yeah, that's-
We can include that or you can include
Okay.
that as a condition of approval.
okay. If that's the only concern of the commission, I will be open to take a motion on this item unless any of the commissioners would like to hear a presentation of the project.
I have no problem. Chris, then maybe you should make a motion with
I make a
suggestions.
motion to look at adjusting the driveway apron to allow easier access to the 3 lots and retain the on-street parking stall.
Okay, so you're moving approval with that suggestion.
I'm moving for approval with the staff, let's see, how do I suggest this? Yeah.
Giving staff discretion.
Yes, I'm okay. I'm
I
moving
think
to-
we would evaluate that as part of the building permit application, because we would need to have the actual dimensions, both of the existing driveway apron and then, how it could be readjusted for access onto the site.
Right. Okay, so I move to approve conditional use PA 16-019, giving staff discretion to allow the tenant to adjust the apron to the parking pad and still retain the on-street parking stall.
Okay?
Okay.
Second.
There's been a motion and it has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? None. So your project has been, the project planning application 16-019, conditional use permit to convert new living space and have 3 off-street parking spaces at 907 Key Route has been approved. There is a 14-day appeal period, and as you probably are aware, it was approved with the condition to work with staff to adjust the apron for the entrance to the parking. But otherwise, there's a 14-day appeal period, so please don't make any permanent decisions until after that appeal period is over. Otherwise, you are good and approved. Yep.
Okay.
So we are done with the consent calendar, and now we're going to move on to the public comment period. The public comment period is available for anyone desiring to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on an item that is not on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and under the Brown Act, the commission is only able to receive your comments since the item is not on the agenda, and therefore such items are referred to the staff for their comments and may be included in a future commission agenda for a full discussion. Do we have any speaker cards, or anybody like to come?
You
Please.
can go up.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alexa Hauser. I'm a member of the Diverse Housing Working Group, and I'm here tonight to call your attention to, if you're not aware of, the work being done by the Social and Economic Justice Commission on Rent Review Board feasibility. Here's a flyer on the event coming up next week. As you're probably aware, the commission met in June on a first hearing in the Edith Stone Room, and it packed the house. There were many renters there, many homeowners there, and many housing advocates there. And we had a great set of testimony provided by different people. The commission is taking their role very seriously and is looking to nearby cities for what they have done. And they're putting together a proposal for this July 21st meeting. And it's going to be a hearing on that proposal. And this is, of course, part of the housing element and is one of the things that I was very impressed by was the desire of the commission to craft an ordinance for Albany that addresses the variety of needs of renters and homeowners who need money from their investment. And I think they're going to do a good job, but I urge you to pay attention to what's going on here and to let people you know who are concerned about these issues know about this meeting so that they can attend and give their input so we can have the best possible outcome for Albany. Thank you very much.
I have a question for you, Alexa. I'm just curious. It says that they are working on the preliminary report. Do you know when that will be available? And
I think it will be available just like your materials are available 5 days before this meeting.
okay,
So it'll be part of the packet for this meeting.
okay, great. And is there a way that we can access it once it's available?
Yeah.
Besides just going to the meeting?
You can you can sign up through email alerts to get the announcements of the Social and Economic Justice Commission, and then you'll get those materials automatically emailed to you, or the link to them, or you can go on the website, the city's website, and to the Social and Economic Justice Commission and the agendas, current agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who'd like to address the commission on something that's not on tonight's agenda? If there's no one else, I will close the public comment period and move on to our, as I like to call, action items. I guess we'll start with the encroachment. Oh, I'm sorry. And I guess for everybody's,
Yeah, I'll be happy to make an announcement. And for the commission's benefit, the encroachment permit for the YMCA is no longer needed. Jeff met with them this afternoon. They have modified their project design so that the improvements that were proposed to be in the right-of-way can now be enclosed within the building footprint, eliminating the need for an encroachment permit entirely. So,
Okay,
That's a good solution.
yes, it is.
okay, good.
And so our next item is planning application 16-010, design review and parking exception for 819 Cerrito Street.
yes, and Commissioner Kent is recused on this due to proximity of his residence. And we are actually going to have our summer intern, Sophie. She is a planning student at Occidental College. She was with us last summer. She's with us again this summer. She prepared the report that is before you this evening and will also do the presentation.
Okay, great.
Hello, Commission. This is Planning Application 16-010 for 819 Cerrito Street, a design review and parking exception. And just some brief background, the subject site is 2,500 square feet with an existing 1,984 square foot home that was approved and built in 1987. The parcel was originally opened by the property owner at 815 Cerrito, owned by the property owner, not opened. The owner received a certificate of compliance in 1986, and it sold shortly after, and the design review for the home was granted in 1987, and the existing home built in 1988. There's a street view for reminder. And the project request, similar to before with a slight change, is that the applicant would like to eliminate one existing conforming off-street parking space, and by doing so create a new front entrance to the home with canopy cover and a fixed light panel included. And the interior space would be reconfigured as an entry mudroom with closet space. That's a change. The original request is having it as unfinished space. And the existing entrance located on the north side would be eliminated. And here's an updated proposed elevation. And here's just a summary of, you reviewed this as a study session back in March, and you gave a feedback that you were excited that the project incorporated livability and accessibility, but you wanted to see a landscaping plan to improve the relationship to the street, and you needed further information about the seismic upgrade and structural setup of the property in order to allow the parking exception. So with that feedback, the applicant made the following changes. They submitted a complete landscaping plan to align with not only residential design guidelines, but also general plan policies, and included more specific seismic structural details to support the proposed parking exception, including a general plan policy from the environmental hazards element. So the landscaping plan now includes a new street tree, a native plant garden, a new driveway path, as well as, per the suggestion of the commission, permeable pavers as well. And here is a more detailed look into the necessary moment frame to uphold the soft story garage space. And you can see the arrows pointing to the specific posts and beams in the necessary placement that would allow for a parking exception due to the dimensions of the space. And here are the three main general plan policies this project is upholding, specifically with the inclusion of the policy 1.3 regarding retrofits that strongly encourages the retrofitting of existing structures, which would apply to this project, as well as front yards and, of course, the housing reinvestment. And the proposed project would be considered categorically exempt. And the staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to attached findings and conditions of approval.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions about the presentation? No. Oh.
I just had one. Procedurally, does the staff report get modified to include this, or how does it becomes part of the record with the minutes?
You mean specifically with the seismic
Yeah.
retrofit? What will happen, it's identified within the presentation, so that's part of the record, and it will also be reflected in the meeting minutes, but certainly in your motion, if you want to include that, that would be another way to recognize it.
And I know there are notes kind of scattered in the project plans that reference the seismic upgrades too.
Yeah, my concern was just that it wasn't called that specifically,
Oh.
that
Yeah.
there was the
That language.
general plan language, yeah, which I
Oh.
think is kind of the basis of.
Yeah.
Justification for it. Yeah, okay. Very good. And with that, I will now open it up to the applicant if they would like to present their project to the commission. And although this may be familiar, please just feel free to describe any of the rationale behind it, anything that might help us understand the project.
Staff did a good job of good overview. It's kind of a small project, so a few slides here.
From the beginning, yeah, there you go.
So this is the existing view of the house. So my client, the Gold family, they moved here a few years ago, and since moving in, these issues have come up with the main issue being the seismic retrofit of the soft story, and their kid's bedroom is right above the garage there. The second issue is just the usability of the current garages. They're it's quite narrow. Let me go back a step. So this is actually the current front door to the house. It's down a side yard. It shares its path with the adjacent driveways, which is quite dangerous for them going up and down. So there's no kind of front entrance to the home. The next issue was the garage itself. It barely meets current standards for a two-car garage as it is, and once we add the seismic strengthening on either side, it's even narrower. It's down to 15 and a half feet. So it's impacting the usability even further. This is the seismic plan, which is actually included in your packet. It's the last page of should be the last page of your packet. It includes the seismic work involved in strengthening the upper floor, so that hopefully answers your question about whether it's included in this design or how it's
No,
called.
I was more concerned with the staff.
The
report.
language.
Yeah.
So our plan was to kind of solve all of these problems by creating a larger one-car garage that actually will fit their modern cars, have a second tandem space in the driveway, which is how they kind of park anyway right now, and then creating a front entry that gives more of a street presence to the home, and provide landscaping and a front yard with some trees and landscaping. So I think the change is quite modest, but it's going to have a pretty big impact on their livability and the street life and interaction with the neighbors. So that's the extent of it. So if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Nope. No? Okay, I guess one question I have for you is, when I was looking at the plans, I believe the door schedule gave the garage door a width of 8 feet. And so I guess my just kind of concern or question is, did you look at either having a wider garage door of, say, like 8'6" or 9 feet wide, and how did that impact the design if you did look at it?
We didn't want the garage to, right now the whole facade is taken up by garages, so we did want to limit that, the impact. We could look at wider doors. I think that getting into the current doors are 7'6", I believe. So they're even narrower, so this will give them a little more space.
Okay.
So,
Okay, and I guess the context why I'm asking is just, I just want to make sure that it's as usable as possible.
Right.
Just because I know we have, a lot of people have issues where the garage doors aren't big enough to fit their modern cars in because they're
Right.
done in the past. So I just wanted to make sure that issue was thought about. And that's my only question.
okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Unless there are any other questions for the applicant, I will now open it up to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to address the commission on this project? Seeing nobody, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
All right, I guess I can start.
Great.
I think the project is a real good addition to the house and to the neighborhood. It really improves the house, greatly improves the house. I had trouble before making the finding for the front yard parking exception, and the finding was difficult to make under the circumstances facing here because it already has a two-car garage. I think the need for the seismic upgrade and the justification for that allows me to make the finding, and I can make that finding, and I'm prepared to approve the project. I think overall, it's a very good project and a real nice modification to the home aesthetically, yeah.
I just concur, so.
Yeah, I concur also. I also like the changes in the side yard. I think it hopefully will make for good neighbors and just kind of beautifies the project as a whole. Yeah, and so I guess my one thought, I'll just say it just so the applicant hears it, is that I hope that the garage door is big enough for you to actually use the garage in the future and improves the situation. With that, I guess I will open it up for a motion.
I will move approval of PA 16010, design review and parking exception for 816 Cerrito Street.
I'll second.
There's been a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and Commissioner Kent is recused, so your project has been approved. There is a 14-day appeal period, so please do not make any permanent decisions or modifications to your home until that appeal period is over. Otherwise, it has been approved. Thank you. And so our next project, actually, I'll wait till Ann gets Commissioner Kent. Great. Okay, our next project is planning application 16-028, design review for a second-story addition at 927 Polk Street.
As you're looking at this project now for the second time, you looked at this previously this spring on April 27th and gave feedback to the applicant. They have made some of the suggested revisions, which are back before you tonight for further review. The subject site is a 5,000 square foot lot with an existing 1,140 square foot 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home that was built in 1937. There have been miscellaneous permits issued over the years for general maintenance, as well as in addition to the garage and photovoltaic panels. This is the house as you see it today. It's a pretty good sized lot, but it's a pretty modest sized house relative to the lot and a pretty modest design as well. The applicant is proposing the same square footage as before, so it's a 408 square foot addition on the first floor of the home at the rear. The upper level will have an identical footprint and will include a new master suite. This results in a 1,956 square foot 4-bedroom, and actually I believe it's a 3-bathroom home. This time though with a slightly reduced height of 27 feet 3 inches. Previously it was proposed to be maxed out at 28 feet. There are 2 off-street parking spaces, one of which is in the detached garage and the other in the driveway. And this was the elevation that you looked at before, and some of the feedback that was offered to the applicant included modifying the window design and the proportion of the windows on that second-story elevation. And this is what is before you tonight. The proportion of those windows has been enlarged relative to that wall mass, so that the openings are a little bit bigger. There's also now a bay that is on the south elevation that wasn't there before. This was the previously proposed rear elevation with modest French sliders and a projecting balcony. Now it's been enhanced with decorative guardrails as well as a trellis that will run the full length of the wall. And here you can see this bay from the rear elevation. Just as a general reminder, projects over a .45 FAR are subject to exceptional design standards pursuant to the residential design guidelines. Previously, the house had a fairly tall interior ceiling. It's been reduced to 8 feet, which reduced that overall building height to 27 feet 3 inches. As I noted, the window design has been modified, and there are those additional guardrail and trellis details. There was also a landscape plan that was included as part of your packet, and also there is the bay window on the south elevation. Unlike last time, we didn't receive any correspondence on this latest submittal, so there's no additional public comment that we received in advance of the meeting. The project is categorically exempt pursuant to 15303 of CEQA. And with that, we're asking again for feedback to the applicant and staff. While the applicant has made some effort to respond to the commission's comments, I think one takeaway was that the mass of the house, which was part of your original comments and its integration to the surrounding neighborhood, still could use some refinement. But with that.
I'm sorry, is this a study session?
It's a study session.
Thanks.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that. Are there any questions of Anne or staff? No? Okay. I will now open it up to the applicant and or your architect to present the project if you like. Talking about, and feel free to describe any of the logic or reasoning behind your design intent and anything that you think might help the commission understand the project.
Good evening. My name is Sean. I'm the architect on the project, and I have some material that I copied. Could I pass that over to the commissioner to review? 5 copies. So there were several comments that were made regarding the height of the building originally. And I just want to point out that the maximum height of 27'3" that's indicated in the comments is actually the most severe condition, where the building is, because the backyard is sloping and the site is sloping from the front to the rear. In the worst-case scenario, in other words, the building is 27'3", and I've included several elevations in which, that case is not so, and in one case it's like 25'7", which is in the east elevation, and really, we should consider an average height for the building, as the site is sloping. In many instances, we use an average height. And we've made an effort to address the concerns of the Planning Commission regarding the design. One of the few things that we did was, which I always actually had an issue with, was a little addition pantry that was on the rear of the building that had a shed roof that kind of looked out of place altogether. So my proposal to the owner was to remove the roof and kind of integrate that into the new addition with the similar roof type and so on, to integrate the building into the addition. The new windows, we improved the appearance of the new window, where the existing windows have the older wood sill, and since they were all removed and replaced with a vinyl window, the only remaining sort of historical part of it is the sill. And so we repeated that in our new proposal to install a new sill on all the new windows that we're installing in the building. And of course, there were some comments about the landscaping, and we proposed to put new landscaping in the front and the rear of the building. Some of the neighbors commented on the view. Really, the decks on the first level don't really have any view. They just look into the bamboo fence, and the second level is really looking away more to the east and south rather than any neighbor. As the staff pointed out, we improved the railing and added a design feature, which was the bay window, to reduce the scale. Hopefully we've addressed all the concerns that the Planning Commission had. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
Not right now.
None? Okay, there are no questions now. We may ask you to come back up to the podium to answer some questions later.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will open it up to the public and see if there's anyone who'd like to address the commission on this agenda item. And seeing as there is no one, and I'm assuming there's no speaker cards,
Just from the applicant.
Okay.
That's the only one we have.
then I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
I actually do have a question for the applicant or architect. So during the last review of this design, there was concern from the neighbor. Has that neighbor been spoken with and shown the new design and it's acceptable, or sort of what's happened with that?
And if you can, just respond at the podium with the microphone, please.
So the neighbor, if you look at this picture, the neighbor is towards the right. And they also have a two-story structure that's overlooking the backyard. So we actually didn't think that particular neighbor's concern was really relevant, since they're looking in our backyard, actually, and we're not going to be looking in their backyard or reducing their privacy. There was a neighbor across the street one house north, I guess, that had a comment about the view and blocking the view, which I also didn't think, and I don't think the staff thought that that was really an issue, since this building totally is recessed in the back and it's not directly in front of that neighbor. It's one house is down.
So I was asking if you spoke with the neighbors and showed them the new design or anything like that.
I spoke with one of the neighbors that I just happened to see. I didn't go there intentionally to speak with them, but when I was out there, there was a neighbor that came out and I showed him the plan, and he didn't have any issue with it. So.
Okay. And I'm assuming, obviously, any of the direct neighbors who live adjacent to the property get flyers notifying them?
Yeah, the property owners within 100 feet receive postcards from the city.
Okay. Okay, I guess that's our question for now. And maybe it might advise you to sit in the front row, because we might have you come back up.
No problem.
Are there any other questions of the applicant? Or if not, I'll bring it back to the commission for a general discussion on this.
Okay, I guess I can start.
Well, thank you.
So I think that the applicant and the architect have been quite responsive to our initial concerns. I'm not sure that they've gone far enough, but you know, we can. I'm not completely happy. I'm very happy with the change in the windows. I like the addition of the bay window. I guess I have two questions here in my mind that make it hard for me to know whether I can support it as designed or not. One is, does it meet the level of exceptional design that we require with this high floor area ratio? It's better, for sure, than it was, and it may be there, but I'm not sure. I haven't made a decision on that. And the other thing that bothers me a lot is that I see what's driving this design is the desire of the owner not to have any stairs inside, to have one level floor. And the result is, on this sloping lot, a very high sort of crawl space or cantilever design almost at the back of the lot. And if the owner were willing to accept 1, 2, 3 stairs integrated into the design, interior stairs, the whole thing could drop down by 1, 2, or 3 feet almost, or 2 feet anyway. And the rear design would be better integrated into the site, because you wouldn't have this large crawl space or empty space under the finished floor. And so I think, in my mind anyway, in order to have meet the exceptional design kind of criteria, I think the house should be snuggled a little bit more into this unique lot on the slopes it has, and it could drop down, and it would be more inconspicuous from the uphill neighbors around and about. I have to respect the applicant's desire. I mean, if it's their architectural program and their desire, for sure, to have one level floor through the entire length of the building, and I could appreciate that, then I guess that's their wish, and that's their desire, and if they have the 3 votes to support it, then they're okay. But I'd like to see it come down in the back. I'd like to see some internal stairs put in, so that the addition would have a lower finished floor elevation, bringing the whole thing down. That's my personal thing. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm really glad it came down. I think they did the right thing by lowering the interior ceiling heights. I really like the addition of the bay window, and I like the window configuration in the front.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess I'll continue. As Commissioner Donaldson pointed out, I do appreciate your willingness to sort of respond to our comments. I like that you lowered the overall ceiling height by a foot, and attempting to sort of lower the overall building height. And I think the addition of the bay window improves the design compared to the previous design that we saw. And I think I understand or sympathize with what Commissioner Donaldson is saying in terms of the exceptional design. I think you're in the right direction. And I don't know if it's necessarily, I don't know if it's completely the design or if it's the presentation, but just when I look at the drawings that were presented, it just seems kind of flat. And it doesn't seem very dynamic, if that makes any sense. And so I do appreciate that you added the sills to match the existing to the new windows, that you added the trellis, the bay window, and you reduced the height. I think those are all great moves in the right direction. Is there any way you could pull up online the Albany Design Review Guidelines?
Yep.
If you'll humor me, I just want to kind of just point out a couple of things in the images on the Design Review Guidelines. One is a trellis that they have on an existing home, which I think might help your design just by helping it come a little bit more proud of the building. And there might be some sort of subtle moves you can do to help articulate the windows by, I don't want to add cost to the project, but things like putting in wood trim at the head of the windows in addition to the sills, which could be something that's applied to the existing and to the new to help articulate and give a little bit. So if you could go down to, for instance, page 8.
Yep.
Yeah, and so if you were to look at that bottom image, you can see how they have that sort of trellis that's built onto the wall there, and they have, for lack of a better term, they have the posts that are coming out at a diagonal from the building, which helps to bring it off of the building, give it a little bit more depth, make it a little bit more dynamic. I would suggest that's something I would suggest to you, rather than just having a sort of wood trellis mounted onto the side of the building. Try to bring it off the building to give it some depth. That might help. And if you'll, although it's hard to see, some of the concrete columns are articulated with caps to help give them, so things of that nature to help give some more articulation to the building. And although it's very hard to
Eric,
see.
can I ask, are you talking about the rear of the building or the?
I'm talking about the building as a whole, I guess, yeah. And also, it's hard to see, but there's this kind of header above the window here, a grade header. Things like that, by just putting a 2x cedar boards at the headers to sort of articulate the windows more might help to make it more of a dynamic project. And again, I also appreciate that you put in a decorative railings for the back. So I guess those are my concerns. In terms of the, as Commissioner Donaldson pointed out, the lowering the height, I kind of agree with him, but ultimately I think since you're the ones who have to live there, I think what you choose, I would be willing to support if that's what you think will be best to make your house livable. So yeah, so again, I know I said this last time, but I would just really recommend that you look at our design review guidelines and try to look at some of the things like this trellis piece down here, and just how some of these representative photos show details within Albany. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment?
Yeah. I had some of the same comments. I thought maybe it was a rendering style or something, and I wasn't getting excited for the building. But when I looked at the landscape plan, then it really came home to me what was going on. The landscape plan isn't really a plan, it's just a bunch of symbols thrown on there. I couldn't read all the plants, but some of them, most of them I could. And there are some symbols on the plan that aren't in the legend, so not all of it's clear. But what I could read, you had Kentucky bluegrass in the rear, which is a very water-loving plant. There's lots of better drought-resistant plants you can use, dwarf red fescue. And in the front yard, you have Kentucky bluegrass, which should probably be like a Point Melati red fescue, which is a low watering use, because you're not going to be playing on the front yard as much as the rear yard, so it doesn't need to be as rugged. you have flannel bushes, 7 of them, or 5 of them lined up right on the property line to the neighbor to the north. Those, and you have them drawn at about 3 or 4 feet wide. They're actually get to about 10, 15 feet. Those are big plants, and they would take over that side significantly. So I think you need to size your symbols to the size of the plant. And you need to think about what they're going to be like in 5, 10 years. I think you just threw the symbols on there without any thought to it at all, really. The purple flowering plum is 6 feet wide on your plan. They're about 10 or 12 feet wide after 10 years. Did you take out, looks like you have a heavenly bamboo on the east side of the property, but the photographs show existing bamboo. So I guess you're taking out the bamboo and putting in heavenly bamboo? Is that the intent?
There is a bunch of bamboo. We're enhancing, we're adding some to.
Okay, well, the heavenly bamboo isn't really a bamboo. It's just kind of a plant that's called that. So if you're putting bamboo in, you want to put in bamboo, because it doesn't look bad. What's there, it looks pretty nice. You're not calling out the ground surface between the plants. So you got little symbols floating around. We don't know what's between that. If you have areas of grass, then what is all the rest of it mulch or DG or concrete? Coming down off the steps in the rear and turning to the backyard, which I think will be an obvious route, you have 2 flannel bushes there, and flannel bush is not something you want to rub against. It's, you get rashes with it. It's a very pretty plant, and I think it'll grow well there, but you want to put it where you're not going to be rubbing against it. So they're just some of the things I saw looking at it, not without a lot of thought and a lot of study. So it made me realize you weren't really putting a lot of thought into it. I think you should, for the landscape plan. Get somebody who knows their plants a little better and size it accordingly.
And also, too, I just want to put in context, I think we, as a commission, are being very sort of critical of this project because of, purely because of the floor area ratio. And so that, in general, any project that increases its floor area ratio or usable square footage up above a certain level, we require an exceptional design. And so thus, we're getting very sort of critical of the details of the project. And so I guess if or when you present this for an actual design review and approval, I would just say be very mindful of the details and make sure that you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, just to make sure that you're presenting us your best possible presentation of the project. And then another note I'll just make really quick was that in terms of your comment about the neighbors and the previous study session when the neighbors were talking about the height and adding the second floor. I mean, I personally, I appreciate that you reduced the height. I don't think, at least I personally don't believe that there's a sort of protected right to views. And so I found it interesting that I think it's 2 houses to the north on your block. There's the same sort of pre-existing condition where you have a 2-story home that's directly adjacent to another 2-story home that's blocking the other house's view. So not to say that I want that, but I don't think that this house would be the only one that's creating that situation on that block at the very least.
Okay. Chris, I want to thank you for your comments. I think that's really good. And it occurs to me that if there is, I hadn't looked at it that closely, and I didn't read the landscaping plan with that level of detail or understanding, but the grasses you're talking about that are in here do not meet the bay-friendly landscaping. And don't we require that? Don't we ask for bay-friendly landscaping? Or
We
can't
encourage it to the extent possible.
And so I think we should, so, and I think that we should follow those criteria, and I don't think
All the plants do,
those
except for the
water-loving
lawn,
grasses
yeah.
are in there, are they? They're not bay-friendly, are they?
No.
They're not, yeah, okay.
Can you say that again, Chris, what you just said?
I think,
Well,
so I think we should-
there are other, yeah, I mean, yes, there are other lawns that are a lot more bay-friendly. They're both drought tolerant and pleasant to play on and can hold up to it. And
Yeah.
I don't think any lawn are really that bay-friendly, but
Yeah.
I understand the need for lawn. They're really pleasant, and so minimize it, but put it where you're really going to use it, and definitely use the drought tolerant, rugged types of grasses.
And if I understand correctly, the sort of least bay-friendly or least drought-tolerant aspect of the landscaping plan is the grass areas.
The lawns, right.
The lawns. And the rest, in that context, is okay. But yeah.
Yeah, the species are fine. The placement and arrangement.
Yeah. Are there any other
And
comments?
I hear as well, I'll comment, and I hear, Eric, what you're saying too, how important the attention to details are on this, and I appreciate your looking at the design review guidelines carefully. And I think I'll add to that, that when walking around this house, I think it's attractive. I think I really like the paint job. It's very well painted it's the trim. It looks like it's a neat and clean, a well-maintained building right now. And if you carry that through with the new addition, it'll be successful. But if the new addition looks like it is made of inexpensive materials that are put together inexpensively, it won't work at all. It'll not be good. And the project that I really liked tonight, 1109 Stannage, is a project that came out really, really well, I thought. And a big part of that was high-quality paint and high-quality, good, tasteful selection of colors, but also very good workmanship on the trim. And even though I noticed that the trim was not expensive trim, it was straightforward. A lot of it was standard 2x2, I think, maybe redwood or cedar. But boy, it sure came out well with good workmanship. And that's what you're going to need to have if the back decks, the back railings are going to really look good. And I think you could do something more creative, a little bit more creative back there with the back decks and the railings. They've been designed. They're very square. They're very, very rectangular, very angular in every way. I like what you did with the decorative lattice work that you're proposing. That won't look like it came from Home Depot. It'll look like it's custom built for your home. That's good. I'd say more of that would be in order in doing the drawings for those back decks. Overall, they're of less concern for me because they're not visible from the street, and you're really the only people that see them. But the bigger concern is from the street, and I like Eric's suggestions for looking more closely at the window trim details on the new addition, and just in general the detailing would be good. And then I think you're okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is for you to do what you like with, but I might suggest for the next presentation, or if and when you present this for review, formal review, maybe look into a colored rendering of the elevation that has a little bit of shadow on it, because that'll help us differentiate the volumes. And I think I understand why you drafted it as you did with the textures to differentiate the existing versus the new. But I think in terms of the elevations that we have to review, which is the only thing we really have, it does you a disservice because it just makes the building look very flat and doesn't give us anything to really go on. And the color and rendering might also be a way for you to express your chosen paint scheme going forward. So that's just something to think about as a way to help represent and express the project to us.
I did receive a speaker card.
Okay. Sure. I'll close the discussion and reopen the public comment period.
Otto Stein? I can. No, I can't do that for you. You'll have your 3 minutes, but you can pass them.
Could you pass this around, please?
Yeah, hi. My name is Otto Stein. I'm here. My wife cannot be here because she's in the Caribbean with my daughters, but she sent me this email because we are concerned about the modifications that are presented here that actually don't represent our last meeting. Our main concern was the height of the building, and the only difference is 9 inches. And I will read this. He said, "Honorable members of the commission, the reduction of the overall height of the addition by 9 inches does not address the significant concerns regarding scale as compared to the neighboring homes on Polk Street. Unfortunately, this design continues to ignore its impact on the views and daylight of neighboring homes. The design does not respect nor retain the traditional minimal appearance of the original home. Instead, it adds a tower-like structure to a modest bungalow, which overwhelms neighboring homes. The addition of bay windows detailed to south elevations failed to reduce the bulky appearance of the second-story addition. Instead, it appeared tacked on as an afterthought to satisfy aesthetic requirements. This bay window had instead been located on the west elevation of the addition. It would have added architectural interest and character to the street faces of the home. Furthermore, the addition of landscaping in the backyard does nothing to mitigate the appearance of the home from the street. Finally, the lack of decoration architectural details such as eaves, dormers, trims, and sills create an addition which fails to complete or integrate with the original structure, let alone harmonize with the neighboring homes. The revised design as presented tonight is not consistent with the character and scale of the other home on Polk Street. We respectfully request that the Commission recommend further design refinements. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Otto Stein and Ingrid Eliasson. And my other neighbor, Alex, couldn't come and speak on his behalf because he's out of the country. And one more thing. The last time I make a comment about the number of bathrooms, I think we are not taking in consideration the water pressure in the zone. I worked for East Bay Mat for 25 years. I retired from there. You cannot just add things. Is there any documentation about the water size of the meter? I add a dishwasher in my house. When I have the dishwasher, the laundry room, and somebody take a shower, the pressure goes down. So we need to consider this when we are allowing people to add more bathrooms. Another thing, what about the electrical meter? Is there any information about the capacity of the unbreaker for the meter? I don't see anything on the drawings.
I can answer those questions.
Sure.
That actually gets vetted out as part of the building permit process. So chances are, I don't know if the electrical panel has been updated for this house, but it's more than likely, if it hasn't, it will have to be upgraded as part of the renovation. Similarly, this scale of this project will require a fire suppression system, which will likely trigger the need to increase the meter size from 5/8 to 1 inch.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you. And I mean, I'll just sort of respond to your comment that our scope is purely limited to the design of the project. And so as Ann pointed out, things like the electrical metering and the water pressure are things that would be regulated by the building inspector and the building permit process, which they will require to be up to state and local municipal codes. And so in that sense, I hope that gives you a little bit of reassurance. But in terms of our review, we are purely looking at the design, the aesthetic design of the project. But thank you for your comments. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Sure. Thanks.
Is there any other public comment? If not, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for any other suggestions or comments about the design for the applicant.
Everything that I think has already been said.
Yeah. The speaker asked the commission to recommend design refinement, and I think that's what we've been doing.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we've provided you with some comments. I think the project is definitely in the right direction. I think there still is a little bit more refinement of design that's needed, but again, you're in the right direction, and I will always kind of express my thought that if possible, I think it always helps. I don't know if it always comes out the best, but it always helps to be proactive in communicating and involving your neighbors in the process, and at least attempting to address their concerns. That can't always occur, but it always helps to try to proactively try to address them. And I think, again, you're in the right direction.
Can I add one more clarifying remark? It's really important that when you draw, I mentioned it quickly, but I want to stress it, when you draw the symbols on your landscape plan, that you show the mature size. Part of Bay Friendly is not to put plants where they have to constantly be cut and sheared. So if you draw them the correct size at maturity, that way you lay them out and they won't be hitting the building or crossing the walkways or all that stuff. So do that.
And always feel free to to use staff at some way if need be or possible to help you move the project forward. I guess unless there are any other comments, we will close this item.
We'll look forward to seeing it come back, hopefully with findings ready to go.
Yeah, for formal review.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for your participation.
Okay.
With that, I will close that's it. I will close the action items and open to new business and announcements.
No new business tonight. Just briefly under announcements, the commission was made aware, I think, that there were 2 appeals that went to the city council, one on June 20th and one on July 5th. The one on June 20th was 939 Evelyn. That's one of the McGregor homes with a second-story addition parking exception. It was ultimately approved by the city council with 2 additional conditions, one of which was to obscure glass for privacy on the north side, the other of which was to require an exhibit at the time of building permit submittal verifying the FAR calculations. So that application has been brought to a conclusion. With respect to Orange Theory Fitness, which was the second appeal, that was...
Appealed by the neighbor who commented at public comment?
It was actually appealed by Orange Theory Fitness, which is very unusual to have an applicant also be the appellant. And they were...
made the condition of hours.
Yeah, it was the operating hours.
The applicant appealed it. They want to
Yeah.
open at 5:30.
Yeah.
We didn't want them to open at 5:30.
So one thing that they submitted with their appeal that really would have been beneficial at the commission review was an acoustic report indicating that they were going to eliminate all of the windows at the rear facing the neighbor's property, as well as taking out the patio sliders and putting in a solid man door. That information was included as part of the appeal, and when the council heard the appeal, they approved it with a condition that at the 6-month compliance check-in that goes back to the commission, if the business has been operating in compliance with the noise ordinance and there haven't been any complaints, the commission would have the authority then to allow an opening hour of 5:30.
Okay.
Was it clear in that meeting that, at least I felt when they made the presentation, they didn't have adequate presentation to actually have a discussion in terms of like...
They didn't have any plan. They didn't really have plans.
You mean on Orange Theory Fitness?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had their
Yeah.
builder there who couldn't really speak to...
Yeah, when it went to the commission, they had their architect, and from what I learned from the applicant afterwards, they never empowered him to speak specifically to the business operation, just the tenant improvements and...
He admitted that at the meeting.
Yeah.
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 And so it was interesting, when they had the representative at the city council, he's actually a regional manager.
Yeah.
And I was telling the chair before the meeting that he actually was joking with the council about giving them discounted gym memberships. So a little bit out of context,
Only 3 of them took him up on it.
but everyone had a good sense of humor about it, so.
I have a general question. I know another project that was appealed was the Cornell project, the modern.
Yes.
Has that gone, or will that be?
So that luckily had a happy ending. The appellant and the neighbor agreed to meet and talk through some of the design concerns, and I gather it was a pretty lengthy meeting, but they started a back and forth process. And there were a couple design modifications there were 4 altogether that they agreed to, which I don't think, when I looked at them, some of it fell in line with some of the commission conditions, including, relocating some of the railings for privacy, providing additional vegetative screening, and both parties agreed to those 4 design modifications. I looked at them and I thought, okay, this works. It doesn't substantially change the design, and so they agreed to withdraw the appeal.
So
Okay.
their objection was really about privacy, not architectural
I
design.
think, it had a lot to do with privacy, and I think just the change in the exterior aesthetics, going from a typical Albany bungalow to a very modern, contemporary design. But as I explained to the appellant, the nice thing about that was that it actually provides then conforming parking, conforming setbacks, and that would have been problematic, I think, at the council level. It's hard to justify an existing condition which doesn't meet the intent of either the zoning code or the building code.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the updates.
That's good.
And so our next meeting is July 27th, and
I will miss it. I will be out. I'll be in Costa Rica.
And Val
I'm
is
going to
out?
be out too, yeah.
Okay.
oh. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, we have the month of August off?
You have the entire month of August off. So you have
Okay.
5 consecutive Wednesdays.
Wow.
Maybe 8. No. So our next meeting is July 27th. 2 commissioners will not be here. With that, I will call to close tonight's meeting of the Albany Planning and Zoning Commission.
You'll be there, okay.
Absolutely, sure.